Welcome to the Manager Matt podcast show. The show is designed to give you solutions to your day-to-day management and leadership problems. It's hosted by Matthew Haddock, a frontline manager and leader with over 25 years of experience. If you're ready, then let's get on with the show.
Welcome back to the Manager Matt podcast show. I do hope you are well and getting the results with your team. My name is Matthew Haddock. I am your host. And as ever, please make sure you share, like, and send us a comment. You know how to do it. If it's your first time here, this show is all around leadership, management, a bit of personal development, and all the stuff that goes in between. Today's show is going to be following on from one of my Friday thoughts, where about why people leave your company. And I'm going to go at it for a couple of angles. This one is going to be about how you, as a person, can leave a company in the best way, because parting is such sweet sorrow. And then I'm going to follow up as a leader and a manager, what can you do to make sure you don't lose too many of your very, very important team members? So let's start with the basics. It's very unusual these days to stay with a company for your whole management life and career. There is people that do it, and I love them. I've met them all the way through what I'm doing as a consultant. I meet people that have been around in the past, and it's brilliant to see them, and there's nothing wrong with that. But there is a drive these days to better yourselves, to look for promotion, look for a different location, a different industry, and it means that people leave the company more than they did in the past, and this fluidity is quite common. And if you go back to my Friday thought about why people leave, that was one of the 11 points around having career progression, having mobility, even working in a different location or a different field. But how do you do it in the right way? How do you leave a company in the best way that you don't leave a sour taste? You're keeping the best options open for the future. Because if you are staying in a certain industry, and even if you're not and you want to come back, having good relationships when you leave is the best way forward. Now, there might be a time where you just cannot cope and you end up having to leave in a bad way. And there is those cases that you can find very freely on the internet around people who just had enough, and they go around the route of constructive dismissal or just go outside of the norm, things that happen. But today we're not talking about that. Today we're going to talk about how you can land a really good exit, a really good way to leave a business that doesn't leave a bitter taste. It leaves a good legacy, and your name isn't getting blamed for everything that goes on. But I'll let you in a secret. Most of the time, they will blame you for something when you've left, because it's an easy option. So let's dive right into it. So, as with everything, the best way to leave a company is to plan that you've got an exit. So you're going to need to plan that exit yourself. Now, you could say that your manager should do a planned exit, but realistically, as a professional leader, you want to look at a plan to make sure that you are successful, your company keeps going, because you're leaving good people, you're leaving a good company normally. So you want to make sure that they have the best options to get a good person in to replace you, or promote internally and bring somebody in as your successor. So how do you do it? You need to have an exit plan. So firstly, you need to have a personal exit plan, and I think the best way to do that is to know exactly what your notice periods are. So go back to your contract, check your contract for notice periods. Some will be 3 months, some might be a month. If you're very new to a business, as in you're still in probation, it could be weeks, very rare. Could even be 6 months, and that's not uncommon now. If you've got senior leaders, you don't want to lose them so quick. On the idea of leaving before your notice period, I wouldn't advise it. I think it's something you could talk through with your manager if it's something that needs to happen. If things are a bit tense, it could be an exit. Some companies, very immaturely to me, force people to work the notice. I've had a company that did that to me. It was a very long 3 months, which I added very little to that company, and that's not me being negative, but you're in the departure lounge, you know you're going, and especially when I'd spoke around getting out early and moving on, because they weren't going to get anybody in the time frame. They were just holding me because they felt it was a, air quotes, punishment. Hey, what goes on in people's minds? But you need to make sure that you are aware of your notice period, whatever that is. And of course, then, what's the next step? you need to give that notice period to your boss. And your boss first, always your boss first, not your peers, not your friends at work, not your team. No way. You've got to speak to your boss. And it's a good time to check with your boss. At that moment, there might be a counter offer from your boss. You might get something that says, what can we do to stay? Now, it's all about you. It's all your personal choice and preferences here. If it's a case of you were very frustrated and you just wanted a reaction, then yeah, okay, you can put your notice in. It's a risky strategy, and I wouldn't advise it. Maybe it works for you. But I would say you shouldn't do it, no, because realistically, the reasons you're leaving that company are not going to go away. Yes, it might be a raise. Yes, it might be something different. You might get better pay, more options, different hours. But you can always say, you've got to say to yourself in that conversation, before you hand your notice in, what could they do to keep me? And should have those conversations with your leader and boss before. If you're handing your notice in, you've got to that point where you're going. Normally it's because you've got another role. Not always, but maybe you've got another role. I would say if you're going to go to this, you've exhausted all the other options. You've made the firm decision you're going to leave, because it's a sticking plaster that it might promise you this, they might promise you that, but promises can be broken, and you may find yourself stuck in that same position and turn down the role that you wanted to go with. So you're going to tell your boss it's time to do it. If you're going to get a counter offer, have a think about, is that going to be something you're going to accept or even consider? What does that need to look like? Or is it a no? And I would say it's probably going to be a no. But let's get back on track here. We're going with the boss has accepted you handed in. There's tears. They're really sad you're going. It's awful. They've please stay and all that. And it's never happened, but you know what I mean. But you've got to then let the boss dictate what the next step is, especially around the communication. So it's good to let them know and have that statement, right, okay, this is my notice period, whatever that might be, linked to your contract. What do you want, boss, as a communication piece? I'll be led by you. A lot of time they need time to think about it, to speak to their senior people, to look up their options. They may want to reshuffle the pack at this point. It's a good indicator that people might want to move and change. But let's make sure the boss dictates the communication, even with your department. So you've still got to be quiet. You've kept it under your hat. You've handed it in. You've done your piece. But wait, what I would say is by this point, there'll be especially if you're on a short notice period, that you don't want it dragging on too long. You do need to let the team know, and you do need to make sure people are aware that you're going. But in this point, it's up to the boss to come back with you. If you're struggling after maybe a week, go back to your boss and say, look, what is the plan now? We are a week into this. Where are you going? What do you want to do? Have you got a thought about it? Let him lead it, though. And then you need to push to get someone to hand over with. And it's probably not going to be your successor unless it's an internal one. But even an internal one, they're going to go through a process. They're going to have interviews. So you're probably not going to see that. It's very rare that you're going to have someone walking straight in as well. So even if they advertise, get someone really quick and they're on a short notice period. Because you think if you're going to get someone at your level, they're going to be promoted or they're going to come to the company, they're going to have to hand their notice in. So they're going to be at least on a month, 3 months. So it's very likely that you are going to go. Let's face it, recruitment's quite slow, interviewing's a slow process, notice periods, all that's going to go on. Before you know it, the new person's going to arrive when you've gone. So let's have a handover person, someone who can fill the role, hand over your projects, make sure you got it. So again, work with your boss, who's going to be the handover person. And this is where your organisation management OCD kicks in. You're going to have to organise your work to make sure it's easy for someone to hand over to you. So it's got to be that idea of a day in the life. So what do you do in your day and in your week that is the key things, the important things that next person's going to have to do. So make sure that you've got an organisational map. Look at your cadence of your day, your week, your month. What are the standing meetings and standing meetings you do? What are the ones you lead? What are the ones you're part of? What are the project teams you've been involved in? Get it all in a file, write it down. What's going to happen is a handover file is a great thing that you keep secret. Don't put it on the big shared drive that everyone sees, because that would be stupid. You don't be stupid. But get the handover documents together so you're ready to hand over. It's an idea that if you haven't already, make sure you have cleansed the stuff you don't need to do. because there's no point in handing over someone and then you think, well, this is a meeting I go to, but I don't really do in it. And this is a meeting I go to, but I hardly turn up to it. And this is in my calendar, but I've never been. Get it clear. You're not going to be there anyway. Get yourself a clear calendar. Get yourself a clear process that the people who comes in knows exactly what they're going to do and what they're going to be doing. At this point, you'd hope, and you should never manage with hope, I've said that before, that your manager, or you have to get to a point that your manager has communicated it. So the senior team is communicated to, and then it's time for you to tell your team. So your team, hopefully, is going to be disappointed in a way, or maybe pleased, especially if you're going for a promotion, which would be nice. But they need to be briefed. They need to be communicated to the reasons that you're leaving. They're definitely going to ask. You best fill in the gaps, because what's going to happen is people will start to make assumptions. They'll say, oh, he's been sacked. Oh, he's been sent down the road. And that's probably not going to be the case. Most people know that it's not going to be the case. So make sure that you've got a clear communication with your team. Speak to them directly. You've built up a good relationship with these people. You've got good one-to-ones with them. You know about them. You've been there for them. You've developed them. You've got a personal development plans with them. You've done good communication and feedback. You've hopefully left a positive influence and legacy on them. So they want to know when you're going, why you're going, what can happen. It's going to disturb the team. It's going to start to cause some ripples, as these things do, because you're leaving and they'll be used to stability. The person who's been in that role for a while. So you're going to have to make sure you're telling them the reasons, reassuring them that nothing's going to change. The reasons you're leaving are your reasons. It's not about the company going under. It's not about the place being bust. Be very aware that at this point, do not air any dirty laundry. Talk to the beginning about this is a clean break with a good legacy and options to return, because you never know when you're going to come back to these places. So make sure that you're not bad-mouthing the place, you're not slagging off the company. If they really ask you, some people, is it because of so-and-so you're leaving? Be very aware. It's really hard not to, you're human. It's really hard not to go, it's because FY and this and that and da. They're going to remember that. Ripples again, so be careful what you say, because it comes back round. So just be aware, I'm leaving because I've decided I've been here so many years and I had a great time. I love working with you guys, but it's a time for me to move on. There's no promotion for me, I can see at the minute, so I'm going to start to look and go somewhere else, and let them know that the second part of that is, but everything's fine, you're doing a great job, I'm going to hand over to so-and-so, they're going to take this place forward whilst they find a replacement. And of course, at some point, they might not find a replacement for you. They might decide that role is going to get merged. So it can actually help your boss, because they might be thinking, well, I could do with saving some costs. I could do with changing the pack around, shuffling the pack. Gives them an option. So think about that. But yeah, communicate to your team directly, to the people, your directs. Tell them the reason why you're leaving. Tell them when you're leaving. It's quite useful for them to get, your leaving present sorted out. But, you make sure that they know you're leaving, why you're leaving, what's going on. Remember, when you do hand your notice in and you are leaving, don't start getting your nose put out because you're not being invited to stuff anymore. You're not part of the future. The bosses I've worked with are lovely people, and if you are listening, you are lovely people, but they're going to move on quickly. You're not part of the future plan, so you won't be at the meeting for the 5-year strategy because you're not going to be there. You won't be there for the debate around the next customer. There's another caveat here. Actually, if you are moving to a customer or a very close customer, or even definitely a supplier, or even a competitor, which is going to happen because you're in the industries that you're in. So you might be going to a competitor. They may ask you to not be there. It's rare, but they might put you on a garden leave because they don't want it. They will restrict access. Be aware, and this is a little thing that some people do. I'm not saying it's me. You want to get some of them files, that really important work you've done, and you want to get it home and you want to email it because that might be useful next time. Be aware, data protection. If you're sending anything with names, dates of birth, sensitive information about the company, innovations, future plans, strategies, you can't do it. Don't do it. It's not your piece to do. You might have to write something down on a notepad of what happened and reform in the next place you're going to, but do not rob files, because straight away any company with any kind of sense or any sort of structure to it will be watching what you're emailing, watching what your contacts are going out. Most companies now don't have drive access, so you can't download it onto your sticks, which used to years back. Some don't have controls on it, which is surprising with all the data breaches we've had. But don't do it anyway. Whatever you're going to take, and this is from me to you, you might use 1% of it, if that. You take a file and you think, this will be the best thing because I invented it and I used it. You get to your new place, they've already done it. They've already got it in there. If it's a training matrix, a presentation you used, whatever that is, the new place you're going to, it will already have it. So don't try to take it. It's going to leave a bad taste. You're going to have an awkward conversation with your boss if you have taken it, and you are breaching the rules of your contract, which is what you're not wanting to do. But there might be some data that you want to take notes of, get some ideas of, look at that. But my point is, don't be offended if you're removed from groups, removed from WhatsApp, it might actually work. I've not been in so many WhatsApp groups, but you're going to be removed from these things. You're going to be taken away because you're not part of the future anymore. And it's not disrespectful. It's not a dig at you. It's life. You're going. You're not part of the future. Don't overthink it. What you are doing in those last 3 months, please try to add value. You're a professional. If you're listening to this, hopefully you're a professional. So add value. Don't just twiddle your thumbs and read your Kindle and play on YouTube. Add some value to the business. Try to get the projects done that you had in your pipeline. There will be projects that should be delivering in the next 3 months anyway, if you're a good leader and manager. So make sure they're delivered right, because the last thing you want is to think that guy just coasted for the last few months, and it's not fair on the company. If you want to leave early, have the conversation up front. Some companies are open to it, others are definitely not, as I mentioned earlier, but have the conversation. Have an open and frank conversation. But by doing that, make sure everything's prepared. So you can go within a month of a 3-month contract and go, look, boss, I've handed over 95% of the work to so-and-so. These are the files that I've put all the work in we've been working on. I don't think I'm adding a lot of value to you now. I think if I go now, it's going to save you a couple of months' salary. So I think, of course, that makes it important for your boss. Why don't we come to a compromise? Don't try and come in. I've had someone do this before. They handed the notice in and then came back saying, oh, you're going to pay me off then? You're going to pay me notice period? It's like, no. Oh, yeah, you should pay me notice period because I'm going to do nothing. It's like, you shouldn't be saying that for a start because you're professional. But also, why would I pay you? Now you've said that. But if a person comes and went, I've done all this work, I've handed over what you've told me, I've finished project X, Y, and Z, the other projects are 4 months away, the day-to-day has been done, and everything's in this file, I think it'd be an idea if we could get a little bit of a compromise and leave. I don't want any more money. I just want to leave, maybe spend a bit of time at home before my new one starts. See how that goes. Nothing wrong with having the conversation. So what you're going to do let's just have a quick recap. You're going to make sure that you've checked your contract and whatever you're going to hand in is going to be the right notice period. You're going to give your notice to your boss with plenty of notice. You're not going to give it to somebody else, so you're going to be the first person. You're going to give him, if you want, and again, if this is a big one, if you do want a counter offer, you're going to accept counter offers. Think through what that's going to be, but be aware this is a very big hammer for a small nail. You should have had these conversations earlier. Let your boss do the work on regards to when the communication should go out. Make sure you've got a good filing system. Make sure you're collecting what you're handing over. Push for a person to hand over with so they've got a peer. Communicate to your team, definitely either in person with the close members, and then make sure it goes out to the other team members. Probably didn't say that. Look for something that communicates to the wider team, and make sure that if you do want to go early, you have an upfront and adult conversation about it. Well, that's it for what I feel. If you're going to leave a company in a good way, of course, I'd love to hear what you think. So you can send it to the managermattpodcast at gmail.com, or you can get me on LinkedIn, Matthew Haddock, or you can put it wherever you're getting these. If you get on YouTube or wherever, put a comment in the box. Email's probably the easiest. I do answer all the emails, and I'd love to sort of say what you would do in these situations. What have you done differently? How good? How bad? I have heard horror stories about people leaving and almost being shackled, not physically, but to a place because they had to work the notice period, and the boss thought they were really doing a harm to the guy who was leaving, and realistically he just thought, well, fine, I'll just read my Kindle all day and sit in corner, you're paying me, which, totally crazy time. Well, that's it for this week's Management Show. Thank you so much for listening, and as ever, I'll see you later. Goodbye.
Thank you so much for listening to this Manager Matt podcast. We hope you found it interesting, helpful and actionable. One last thing, please leave a quick review on iTunes or with your podcast provider, as it helps to spread the word of Manager Matt. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe to the podcast, and if you did like anything in particular, send an email to managermattpodcast@gmail.com or visit managermatt.co.uk for more content. Feedback is a gift, so let's keep giving. See you next week.